All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to IMC Live, an interactive web show hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective. My name is Brendan Forrest, Director of Accounts here at the Industrial Marketing Agency Gorilla 76, and I am one of your IMC Live hosts today. This week we have a great show. We are joined by the one and only Dale Underwood. Dale, you've been hanging out in Industrial Marketing Live and now IMCL Live for years now. So it's really great to have you on the show with us. And I'm really excited about the topic today. You've been kind of like pioneering this pricing curiosity thing, after like falling into digital marketing. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about pricing and how to be transparent with it. That's one thing, like I'm always trying to push clients. Hey, let's talk about pricing. Like your customers want to know about your price and let's not make it a secret. Let's build some trust early on. So I'm excited for you to give us some tips and pointers on how to actually go about and do that. So Dale, who are you, man? How did you even get into digital marketing? How did you come up with the pricing curiosity thing?
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. It's nice to go from being a lurker for a couple of years to actually
Yeah.
participating a little more. And I do appreciate the opportunity and taking everybody's
Hey,
time. So
man.
hopefully, I can come up with some ideas and we can get some input from everybody. The first thing I want to start with, and you brought up a good point, Brendan, is I just kind of want to ask the group a question, and that is, have you ever been on a website, you're interested in a product or a service, um, and you were trying to find out basically just how much this thing is, but you got frustrated and you couldn't find it. Question is, what did you do? Did you contact sales? Did you fill out a form? Or did you just go Google it and try to figure it out yourself?
I
You know,
mean, like I think with, on the marketing side of things, we all are like looking at digital tools, right? So like we're at the whim of the software gods on like, hey, how much is this thing going to cost me? And I think like HubSpot does a good job of being transparent with their pricing, but a lot of them was like, how much does this thing cost? Like if I'm gonna like do this thing, how much does it cost? And like you look around a little bit, but it's like I'm nowhere near the place where I want to like start talking to a salesperson. So a lot of times it'll just bounce and be like, well, guess I don't really need this thing. So
yeah.
like it's like one of the first things I go and look at when I'm evaluating a tool, and a lot of times the price is out there and it frustrates me because like in my regular life when I'm just buying stuff for myself, for my kids, like consumer prices are everywhere, right? You just go to Amazon, you go to Walmart or Sam's Club, and the price is just there, and you know how much it's going to cost you, and it makes budgeting easy. But it seems like the B2B side of things, no one does that.
Yeah. Well, every company's different. We saw a really good presentation months ago by Fullerton Tool. It's an e-commerce where their
Yeah.
sales and their marketing are really merged together. And so, an e-commerce is kind of like B2C almost, kind of direct to consumer, that they can provide pricing because you're going to purchase it right there. And I kind of look at the sales cycle all the time. Like here's I'm planning to buy and here's I'm ready to buy. And B2C has gotten us accustomed to looking to expecting to see prices. But a lot of times, businesses can't really disclose it. They have complex sales cycles, they have complex products. They may sell, to different tiers of not only end users but to dealers, so and distributors. So it's not always easy. Hey, just put pricing on your website. And this presentation is probably more for those who don't have e-commerce in their future of just, hey, here's a price. And now let the visitor make their decision whether they want to engage or not. What the business that I was in originally was, I owned a commercial equipment business. So I sold large commercial equipment. The machinery was anywhere from 25 to, $100,000. Pretty expensive stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of options. Um, so we really couldn't give out pricing. As a matter of fact, our manufacturer prevented us from giving out pricing. And they actually had an agreement that we couldn't provide pricing because they didn't want, for whatever reason, they didn't want, in their mind, their competitors to see it, which has kind of become, moot these days, but for various other reasons. So I see your point. In some cases, it's good to be able to show it and be transparent, but other cases, we can't do it. So what I look for is how I can use that curiosity about pricing to engage somebody
Hmm.
without violating my sales processes. And when I first started doing this, like I said, I was in a selling equipment, and I had 500 competitors. So I was a small dealer selling equipment. had 500 competitors who were just like me. I only sold one manufacturer's product, and we could sell anywhere in the country. So it was a dog eat dog, environment. So I was trying to think, how in the world can I differentiate my company with, and be able to find opportunities. So I remember my customers always complaining. They're always complaining, how come I can't get pricing? It takes a week to get pricing from you guys.
Yeah.
And even if you explain, hey, I have to go to my manufacturer and get it, they didn't care. They just wanted
Right.
it immediately. So I actually had a programming background. I had done some programming right out of college. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to try to make a little tool that will help customers get pricing, but it won't jeopardize my agreement with my manufacturer. And so I bought a little web server and I wrote this little, ugly little tool, and I put it up on a website, and I want to share that with you. I want to show you what this thing looks like.
Yes, please do.
Was this before the dot-com bubble burst, Dale, or after?
This is about 2000. This is circa 2008, 2009.
Okay, got it.
So here is my beautiful website. Okay, and by today's standards, there's no copy, there's no text. I mean, this is the ugliest thing you could imagine. I didn't really care about it. This is my company, Federal Appliance. It's not home appliances. It's these real sophisticated machines. And this is my manufacturer, EqualLogic. So I put up this website, and the only call to action I have was self-service EqualLogic pricing. That was it. So just this one page. The one thing I did do. What's that? Yeah, straight to the point. The one thing I did do right is I put a good title tag in the page, right? So Google picked this up. So anybody typing in EqualLogic, any of these combinations, they would find this page. And so as ugly as it was, it just took off. I started getting, 50 or 60 requests per month for this equipment, and it was, it's in the millions of dollars. Just from this one call to action. So I was actually getting to the point where I was getting so many leads from here, we couldn't act on them. So I started sending leads to the manufacturer. I got to know all the sales reps that worked at EqualLogic. So I started sending leads back to the manufacturer, probably sending 50, 60% of my leads to them. So about a year into it,
They must have loved you, Dale. Yeah. That's amazing.
Oh, they did.
I had a relationship building.
Yeah, because every time you help a salesperson, they'll help you back. So,
right.
They would find opportunities and bring me in because I was helping them find new opportunities. So it was really a good relationship. But about a year into it, one of the salespeople went to a competitor of EqualLogic's, and they contacted me and said, "Hey, we saw this tool. We want to use that on our website for our sales reps." And I said, "Well, this tool is not really commercial. It's not a commercial tool. But I tell you what, give me a couple weeks. Let me see if I can come up with something." So I started coding. I was coding 20 hours a day for weeks. My wife was hating it. But eventually I had like this minimally viable product. And I said, okay, here's this thing we can try. And I've been through some iterations, and we talked about this earlier about branding, but I went through some iterations on the brand, but I eventually ended up with Safe Price, which was the name of it. But the thing I want to show you is what I realized is when I was finding these leads, I was finding them up in the awareness phase of the sales cycle. And this is kind of important for B2B companies that have long sales cycles is, the earlier you can find an opportunity, the more time you have to add value. So you mentioned about having pricing and quoting and stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's more down in this area after decision. But this was the key point is I was finding these leads really early, like 3 to 6 to even 9 months out before they were going to buy. So I was getting good head start on that.
Yeah, I love that, Dale. Like, to me, it's like if you can get in front of somebody really early and you're like the guy, like you provided the information, built a trust, like it's so much easier to close that thing once it gets later, right? Like once you start getting into like the Google search, and like letting running Google ads, like we still see good success with it. But a lot of times like they're at the point where like they've made all their decisions, they've done all their own research, they get to the ad, they click it, they fill out the form, and it's like, well, you're probably competing with a couple other companies now that they've done some consideration. So if you can just get ahead of that with a really cool tool like this, or maybe it's just more, open information on the website, like your chances of closing that deal are a lot higher.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't require a tool, and that's kind of the point of this.
Yeah.
Is this is not about the tool. There's going to be some concepts we talk about that anybody can do on their site to improve their pricing landing page is what I will
Mhm.
call it. Um, but the object is to try to find them before the competition does, and
Mhm.
that certainly helps you kind of build value and shape the requirements.
Yeah. Dale, were you getting all that action just from the Google interest, or were you also doing like email workflows, or how?
No email. This was 100% inbound. I didn't do any ads. I was not even doing any ads on Google.
Mm.
This was just pure um, lack of competition for these keywords.
Mhm.
I'll say that's probably what it was.
Mhm.
But it was just pure inbound. Um,
If you
you
build
know,
it.
yeah. Well, that was probably a very short amount of time that I had before everybody kind of globbed on and everything took off. But that's how we kind of ended up with this tool, which has been growing over 15 years. Um, Mainly in the IT space. So I'm fairly new to the industrial space, even though I've been lurking here for a while. Uh, we've mainly been working in the IT space, but I no longer run that. We just run this tool.
So what is the challenge has been moving into industrial?
I think it's for me. The challenge is, of course, I'm new to the thing. I'm just getting used to the kind of how the sales processes work. But to me, it's refreshing because in the environment I was in IT, you had a lot of turnover, you had a lot of consolidation. Companies are always buying each other. So as a vendor, it's hard to stay in that mix. If a larger company buys you, that they have their own ideas. Manufacturing for me is refreshing because you have smart people doing innovative things. And if I can bring something very simple, we can put some simple concepts in place and help improve customer engagement, then I see it as a really good place for me, not just for the tool, but in general.
Mhm. And how has the attitude on pricing been different?
Um, you mean in terms of using this, or
Just
I,
in general, I would say.
I think you have more traditional sales teams where the sales does in the people that I'm working with, sales handles the pricing and marketing does like the web stuff. So
Mhm.
the way I kind of look at it is we're trying to give sales kind of a seat at the website, at the website table, give them a tool or some mechanism so that they can get a little more uh, direct activity with people who are interested in pricing.
Mhm.
So, Dale, I got a question for you here. So, a lot of times, like, we hear from clients or like from other manufacturers, like, I just don't want to put my pricing on the website. Like, I don't want my competitors to see what our pricing is. I don't want to give that information away to prospects too early because I want them to be talking to a salesperson so we can close a deal. Like
Yep.
all these other reasons why they're not doing that. So, you talked about with Equal Logic, they didn't want you to put pricing on the site. So, how did you get around that? Like, how did that tool get around that and provide pricing that your customers were happy about early in the process while keeping your manufacturer happy? Like, how did that tool do that?
Sure. It all boiled down to sales approval. So just
Okay.
imagine that you put a shopping cart on your website, but it doesn't have any pricing in it. You can select items. It feels like you're shopping. You can choose what you want and kind of build what you want, and then you submit that. And what happens is that request doesn't go into marketing. Like marketing is very used to capturing all the data that's coming into the website, any form or stuff. That we kind of switch it is when somebody requests pricing, it goes directly to the sales team first, and they look at it and approve or deny it. So you can vet whoever's requesting it.
Hmm.
Now, if you approve it, you don't have to call the customer and do all this other stuff. We preload everything so that if the salesperson just simply approves it, then a canned email with the appropriate pricing goes back to the end user. And so you can do that round trip in about 3 minutes from the time they request it to the salesperson looks at it, looks them up on LinkedIn, finds out if they're real or not, and approves it. You can do it very quickly, and they don't have to be tied to their desk to do it.
Mm.
So it really just collapses that turnaround time of giving, and I call it budgetary pricing. What we're not trying to do is configure a solution for a customer to buy it.
Yeah.
Remember, we're up in the planning to buy, not the ready to buy. So we're just trying to give them, we use ranges a lot, use a range of pricing. So sales is comfortable about sending it because they know it's not going to negatively affect their negotiating later, right? Give them plenty of wiggle room.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
So it all boils down to having sales approve it. Now, one thing that's I kind of to back off a little bit is, as marketers, we're always looking for content that is powerful, that will draw people in and that will help us engage, with them if they're interested in our product. And I have a couple of criteria, and the reason that pricing is, well, I think it's a kind of a golden piece of content because it has certain characteristics about it. And if you don't mind me sharing it,
yeah,
I've got five things here that are key. Is pricing has high value for the prospect. You said before, our brains are wired to just wonder immediately how much it costs. It's not because we're going to buy it. It's because we're trying to understand it.
Right.
Is it 5,000? Is it 50,000? Is it 500,000? Our modern brains are wired to ask that question almost subconsciously so that we can begin to understand what's being offered. So it has very high value to a prospect.
It's almost like it's like an energy saving evolutionary thing, I think. Because like if this thing is like way outside of my budget, like I don't even want to like spend the time doing any more research, right? Like if I know like my budget's 50K and you're saying this thing's 500, like it's like, oh, that is way out of what I could spend. So I don't even want to like explore that. So
Right.
like, but you're not telling me that early on makes me waste a lot of time and energy, which is really frustrating.
Then feels like a bait switch.
Exactly.
Yeah, time is the most important thing these days. I mean, everybody has information. You have all the product information you want, but if you can, you're almost swamped with product information. So if you can whittle it down to a short list, hey, I can afford these 3 or 4 things, and then dig deeper into that. I'm always amazed at companies that ask for demos and things before you can find out what something costs, or a sales call before you find out something costs. I'm not going to spend an hour on the phone with a salesperson talking about the value of their product if I can't afford it.
Right.
So
Yep.
you're right on with that.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting into trying to figure out where pricing ends and quoting begins.
Yeah.
And how much customer service needs to be a part of that self-qualification process leading into the quoting. So how do you all think about that?
About quoting versus pricing?
Yeah, and then where that line needs to be.
There's a pretty clear line for me. But we tend to, and I've got to have that in a couple of examples that I'm going to show you in a minute if you want to see them. I see a lot of people put request a quote on their website. And what in my business, and I have to say, I don't want to speak for everybody because every company's different, and don't ever let me or anybody tell you how you have to address pricing on your site, because it's a personal thing for a company, and you have to decide how to do it. But I see a lot of companies put request a quote. Well, a request a quote is kind of at the end of the process. My business is always I got a quote when I was getting ready to buy something. Pricing is up at the very beginning. So where that handoff is, if I can get sales up here, to handle the pricing, then it's out of my hands. I'm glad to let them do it. They decide when they want to drill down further and give them a quote.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of things too about pricing. Is it's scarce. Okay, it's only available from you. Even though somebody can go Google it, you're the only source for pricing. So for the real pricing, and that's kind of unnerving for people when they go out and Google their own company name and the word pricing, and to see who's actually publishing some of their stuff without them knowing it. Their competitors are writing blog posts. I'm not saying you should write blog posts, with your competitors' names in it, but certainly with pricing would help. But people are amazed when they find out where potential customers are going if they don't have a way to capture them on their website.
Yeah,
So
and that begs the question, to gate or not to gate, if it's already, getting put out the hole in the fence.
yeah, that's right. In those cases, if it's already in the hole in the fence, it's almost okay to just have it auto approve or simply, send them pricing. You could even just gate it a small form on your site and just send pricing, a range of pricing for your products. That's better. At least you know who's getting it and who's interested, instead of just having them disappear into Google, and you find out the worst thing for a salesman is to find out today that a customer is going to buy their competitor's product tomorrow. I sold for 10 years, and that's the worst thing. It's worse than not ever finding out about it. It's finding out that you had a chance to capture them 6 months ago, and you're behind the 8 ball. Another thing about pricing is it appeals to serious prospects more than casual ones. So you don't get a lot of junk inquiries. It's not like a forum where everybody's marketing to you. Why do you think CAPTCHA was created, right? To weed out all that crap. But I think the most important thing about pricing is the longevity of it. Sometimes you create content and it gets propagated and it gets pushed out there, and within a week or two, I could just go Google that study or that white paper. Even if you gate it, I could go find it somewhere. Pricing's different. It never goes stale. What I've noticed is customers who have been customers for a long time, every time they have a new project, they still come back and get more pricing because they know it's probably changed. It never loses its value as a call to action.
Mm-hmm. And we got a question in the chat here.
Okay.
Aya says, one of the fears or objections they get from sales about marketing providing the price information at the planning to buy stage is that the initial marketing price needs to be higher than the quote that the sales provides later. Otherwise, the customer would get mad at the salespeople. But if we provide too high of initial price, that would scare people away. So do you have any advice on what to do to strike a good balance there?
Yeah, that's probably one of the most common questions that I get is we don't want to scare somebody off, but we don't want to give them too low of a price either. So it depends on your company, but that's why we generally use a range. Let's say you have a MSRP price of, let's say it's just $100. What we might put in the tool or put in your sample pricing that you give out would be, it could be anywhere from 95 to 110. You give them some range there, but you got to be careful with your sales channels too. If you want to show a lower price, you got to make sure that you're not going to price your channel out. If they buy it at 80% off, you can't go put 80% off on your site because you just cut all their margin out. So it takes a personal discussion to talk about that, whether you can do something with it. Usually a range works, but I'll tell you something that a customer told me years ago, and I it's still stuck with me today, is after doing this for about a month, sending out pricing, he was very skeptical. He's in Silicon Valley, very skeptical person about providing pricing. He said, I finally realized that what we send to the customer in the planning stage is almost irrelevant. It's just the trust that we gain by sending them something.
Yeah.
So even if it's a sample page that has, okay, here's 5 typical machines or services or whatever, here's 5 typical, it doesn't match up perfect with them. They can kind of see themselves in certain areas and say, oh, this is kind of what I'm looking for. At least this company gave me something. And now the salesperson can start interacting with them and building value. So we don't want to get too specific when we're talking about sending pricing up in the planning stage.
How unique is it to just gift them something? Like how much credit do you get for that compared to the average competitor?
When you actually provide something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, it's huge if you turn something around quickly, regardless of the method that you use. If you turn it around within 5 minutes. I mean, we've all seen that MIT study about the drop off after over time. You know, if
Mhm.
you wait this amount of minutes and you wait more than an hour, and if you wait more than 20 hours, it's better to not even call somebody because they're going to be mad that you waited a day to call them, right? So it's key. If you can turn something around in 5 or 10 minutes and then follow up and make sure they received it, um, you'll have that moment of trust that it's very valuable.
Yeah. Feels almost conversational at that level.
It is, and that kind of brings up a point. Probably the golden question that we always put in when we deliver a range of pricing, or if you were to do that, um, the first question we ask is, we don't say, hey, you know, what's your time frame, what's your budget, blah blah blah, you know, go for the jugular. We say, have you defined the requirements for your project yet? That's like the golden question for long-term B2B sales, because if I can ask the customer that, 50% of the time they'll say, no, we're just starting to look at it. We haven't defined it. And then I can say, well, you know what? I have a top 10 customer requirements document. I'd be happy to give to you. This is what other customers have used to, you know, when they've worked through these projects. So you actually start seeding and shaping the requirements with them for things that are important to them. They'd be
Mhm.
very, very glad to have that. So yeah, send me that planning document, because then they can start specking in your solution. I was in a very competitive environment, so we had to be pretty aggressive about specking in our solutions, but it's about helping the customer with something he probably needs. And, you know, why give him a bunch of marketing information and let him try to figure out what his requirements should be? Just give him a requirements document. This is what you should look for when you're looking for a CRM system. This is what you should look for, or, you know, this industrial washer, or whatever it might be. These are things you might want to look for. Need an American made company. You know, that's
Mhm.
kind of big these days.
Mm.
Yeah. It seems
That's
like, oh, sorry, go on, Brendan.
Yeah, I was just gonna like that tool sounds like it'd be just like a nice piece of content for the website, like a requirements planning tool. Just
Yep.
yeah, you're starting off in the process. Here's what we've seen work best for our clients that are looking for this type of solution.
Right. Actually, I'm going to drop some text in the chat here, and we have a requirements document for using price curiosity. You know, questions that you need to ask, because it's not
Mhm.
for everybody.
Mhm.
Questions that you need to ask, and it kind of gives you an idea of, would this work for you or not, you know?
Mhm. And how do those questions change, or maybe how specific you need to be on pricing depending on where people are at in the buying process?
Um, when you talk about this requirements document,
Yeah, yeah. Like what content would be the most effective to share with people based on where they are in that process? Like I'm assuming if they're getting close to wanting to buy, they're going to want a really specific number and some really specific data points to back up confidence in
sure.
that. So versus early on when that big range might be more acceptable, more advantageous.
Oh yeah, I see a cone. You know, you see a kind of a cone that starts here and narrows down as you get closer to buying it, get
Hmm.
tighter and tighter, and you're going to get a very specific number. When you're up here, when you're up in the early stages, you're just looking at general things. You know, are you know, are you a company that's solvent? Are you a big enough company to handle the thing? Do you have customer support? You know, things that are more qualitative. Then you're going to get into the quantitative stuff when you get down, exactly what a machine does, or how it works. Um, the earlier that you can get sales involved, you know, marketing's kind of gotten pulled into the idea that marketing has to carry the ball a long way, and marketing does carry the ball a long way now. If you look at engagement, you know, some people don't engage till they're 60 or 70% down the buyer's journey.
Mhm.
We've all seen those stats. But if you can make, you know, pull that engagement back up to the early stages and get your salespeople involved early, then they're going to love it, because they have so much time to build value with the customer, and they'll have to do that at their own pace. So I have a couple of examples. I think we're
Yeah,
doing
let's
okay
see
on
them here.
time,
Yeah,
but
we got time. Let's look at them.
yeah, I did a couple. Let me pull this up here. So actually, just before I jump to the thing, this is kind of what we talked about. Let me get rid of that one. Is when you talk about quoting, you look at the sales cycle, we talk about quoting and request to quote in particular. I hate that for two reasons. I never use the word request because that means I'm asking. I have to ask. That means human intervention. So the customer immediately, when they see request, they know that's just you're going to be contacting sales. So don't even bother doing that.
Yeah.
And then the quote is a late stage action. In my business, that might not be in every business, but in mine, this was something that you get just before you purchase. So this is what I'm always looking at. I just use the word pricing. Let me show you how that manifests.
Yeah, while you're doing that, Dale, I totally agree. Like, I think request a quote's too far down. It's basically just like request my final solution kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you could be talking about the next step in the process, I think, in our call to actions, right? So whether it's like get my pricing or book my discovery call, like what is that next step after they've done the research on the website? Instead of like something that's so far down the line, let's just talk about like what is that next initial step, whether pricing or whatever that first call is going to be.
Yeah. Well, like we said when we started, talking about this, pricing is kind of the first thing our brains think about because we don't want to waste our time if we can't afford it. Here's a manufacturer just as a template. Here's your typical request to quote. I see this all the time. Just imagine if it just said that. If you just change it to pricing, this is something you could do on any site at any time. Just change it to the word pricing, and it's so much more powerful. And I see people they will add things like request pricing or get pricing or see price. Don't put a verb in front of it. Just the word pricing will get probably 2 to 3 times as many people clicking through here on this than the request to quote.
Give them the word that they're looking for right away.
Yeah, that's right. And the next page is where these buttons go, which is for the following examples. That's what I'm going to be spending time on these examples. Is the pricing page or landing page basically. So it's going to go to a landing page, and we all know it's just basically a special page. I call it pricing. That just seems to work the best, but this is probably the most important thing. The pricing page does not have to display or provide pricing directly. Now, a lot of people are going to hate on that, and they'll go out to LinkedIn and say, you got to provide pricing on your site. You don't have to. It's your company. You can do whatever you want. Don't tell somebody else. Don't let somebody else tell you how you have to do that. Our purpose for the businesses I'm in is to drive conversions. Now, imagine somebody clicked on pricing, they hit this landing page, and I have visitor ID tracking on it. Not analytics, but true visitor ID tracking on it. Then just by doing that one thing, changing that word pricing and making a pricing page, I could send a report to sales every day and saying, hey, these 15 companies were looking for pricing yesterday. We don't know their contacts. We didn't convert them, but we know that they clicked on the pricing button and they were interested in some way, and they may be planning a project. So just that small change could make a big difference. Now let's look at the first example. This is one where I took an existing request to quote page and just kind of converted to pricing. And nothing special about this. I always put this, hi, Mary Kay, how did you hear about us? She beat this into my head for like a year. So I thought I'd give Mary Keogh a shout out on that. But all we tried to do is make this pricing page human, personalize it. Instead of just having a cold form that says request a quote and there's no warmth about it. Who's going to get mad at seeing Mike? Right? Who's going to hit this page and say, man, I'm really mad that I didn't see pricing on there. It's like, no, you need pricing, meet Mike. He's a machine designer.
Yeah.
He's not going to give you a sales pitch. I mean, you guys are the copy experts. I'm certainly not, but this is a much warmer page that you could modify today, and you'll probably double your conversions, with overnight.
Yeah, I love this. It humanizes the process. It's like there's no AI generator doing this. We got Mike looking at your stuff based on his experience.
Yeah,
And you know who to blame if things go wrong too.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's great.
Once again, there's the visitor tracking code on the pricing page. We want to know who went to see Mike, right? So one thing about this that we've always never questioned is all the inquiries always go to marketing. Okay, and that's what we've always been used to. The next example, I'm going to show you a little different twist on that. So this is a second example. What this is this is the one we use all the time. This is a dual option. Now, I don't know the psychology behind it. Alan, you guys could explain it probably better than I could, but when you offer someone two options, they tend to pick one or the other. But when you only get one option, it creates resistance.
Yeah, the illusion of choice.
There you go. That's a good way to, yeah. Like I said, I knew that you would have probably a good background on this. And we want to make one that looks really good, one that, is kind of more resistant. So the full service quote is what they do now. They fill out a form, it goes into marketing. They're requesting a quote. And that's kind of good because this side's pricing, this is a quote, right? So am I planning or am I buying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's that works pretty good that way. We tend to put this on there, reduce friction. But let me just drill down into this a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit to it now. You don't have to have a sales tool here. You could even use a second form. You could use a smaller, thinner form and say, this is just for pricing requests. And you might deliver something different back for that. So don't let the sales tool thing sway you. What we're really trying to show here is the flow of the lead. When you fill out this form, every lead goes into marketing. So marketing owns every lead, right? That means when you send a lead to sales and they say, hey, this lead stinks, it's no good, marketing takes a hit on that, right? So over the years, what's happened is marketing has gotten smarter about trying to rank leads and to try to do some kind of ranking mechanism to figure out, hey, is this a good lead? But eventually they tried to say, hey, we need to define what a lead is so we know what to pass you. And that's what gets you into this thing called the lead definition battle, where you're trying to get sales to agree to what a lead is, and sales will say, I can't tell you exactly, but I know a good lead when I see it. Sales is more artistic, kind of in that sense, is they really can't tell you in advance what a good lead is. So there's always some friction in doing this, but it's the way we've always done things. Now, if you look at the self-service side, the lead doesn't flow to marketing, it flows to sales first, and they vet it. Yeah, they may get some junk, but typically you don't get a lot of junk. People requesting self-service pricing, you don't get as much junk for some reason. I don't know what it is, but all the leads go to sales and they approve or deny it. If they deny it, marketing never really knows about it. Who cares? I don't really need Daffy Duck at, China.com. I don't need that in my CRM. But if they approve it, then they kind of own it. And then it flows into marketing. So it just completely eliminates the friction, because you're letting sales do what they do best, and that is make the determination, but you're also letting them know very quickly. If you're holding on to a lead till it reaches a certain, lead rank, and you wait a month for all these different page hits and all this stuff, then you might be waiting too long and the salesperson could have been involved earlier. So that's why you want every inquiry on this side to go right to sales.
Yeah, I'm sure you're singing to the choir on that one. I think most people have dealt with the issue of sales being mad about junk leads that we could really do without.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just a little different, approach on it. I do like this because this is almost a perpetual A/B test. And I kind of look at it as I'm testing A/B constantly, and I don't care which one they choose. I might learn a little more, but what's interesting is when you set this up, you might actually get more of these as well. I mean, we typically see about 3 to 5 times as many here as we see on the full service side. But we see an increase over here too, simply because they have that illusion of choice, right?
Dale, do you see any differences like in sales cycle length between people picking between the two options?
Um, I really don't have visibility into that.
Okay.
I can just tell you that most of the people that are choosing this are in the earlier stages.
Yeah.
They're very early on because we're always using terms like budgetary. We use a lot of non-committal, not lot of non-committal language. Even the email that goes out with this request would say this is not an offer. It doesn't include additional discounts. You put a lot of language around it to make them understand that this is just a wild guess.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But once you get, a pricing page, and however you do it, doesn't matter. Then you just step on the gas. Okay, so here's your pricing page, and there's your URL. Now you can put pricing buttons everywhere. You can put things everywhere, and because you're confident that you've got the capture mechanism on the landing page, and it'll never grow old. So you can put it everywhere. You put it in your newsletters. This is my favorite. Putting text like this in getting your sales reps, once they start getting some of these requests and they like them, you say, hey, why don't you just put this in your signature on your email? So now every sales rep that's sending out an email all day, every day, those reps are sending it out. They're getting that message out that you're easy to do business with, that you have an extra value on your website that they may take advantage of. So those people that take action, they come to the website and use this. Did sales create that or did marketing create that?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of look at it as when you set up a good pricing page like this, sales does a lot of the work and marketing gets a lot of the credit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is the chicken and the egg.
It is the chicken and the egg. Yeah. So that's kind of the end of the examples that I kind of wanted to get through. I did put a couple of questions whether this kind of mechanism, not our tool, just price curiosity in general would work for you. If you have enough traffic, move this over a little bit. I just picked 300. It's going to vary. I don't know what the number would be, but if you don't have enough traffic coming to your website, this is not going to help you. What's your top performing call to action now? Are prospects curious about your pricing? You'll know that. Just go look at your website and say, if I was a customer, would I be wondering how much this thing is?
I think the answer to that question is always yes.
Yeah, it is. And maybe you choose to, do an e-commerce, so you choose to present it. Like I said, Fullerton Tool was an awesome setup. And if you're going e-commerce, then a lot of this may not apply. I would definitely do this. I would probably do this sooner rather than later, because what I've noticed in the past year is AI has really flushed this out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go Google your company name and pricing, or your products and pricing. That's usually where I start with a company. Is I'll go look at their Google search activity and see, okay, what shows up when I search for their pricing? Because now AI is really bringing up a lot of different good pricing information. So if you see a lot of that, it might change your conversation with the VP of sales when you approach them and say, hey, I'm looking at trying something here. This would be a question that I would ask your VP of sales is, does being first in the door give your sales team an advantage?
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are going to say, yeah, everybody says, oh, I want something ready to buy. No, we want somebody who's planning to buy, and we want to be the first one to talk to them. So this is just kind of a ad hoc list of things you might want to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had some questions come up in the chat, and I want to rapid fire them at you. So Megan asked, this was to the chat, but I think you could be a good guide here. What are your thoughts on pricing sheets or pricing packages?
I like them. I like them a lot. If you put a range on it, and depending on how exact you have to get, I call them price papers, actually. Now, instead of a white paper, a price paper, because it's all about pricing, and it's I like that idea a lot. If you have some typical configurations that will make sense to somebody, I tend to go with if you have 1 through 5, I tend to put like a 2 and a 4 on there. I don't put the lowest cost one on there, and I don't put the highest cost one on
Mhm.
there. I might put a couple of middle, so you can kind of get someone interested without affecting your sales process. But I like that idea, and that would be something that you can just do with a separate form on that dual form.
Yeah.
You could just deliver a document with that separate from your contact sales form. That's a great way to go.
I would like even to take a step further, like if you have buy-in from leadership, like I think that could be good stuff to go onto that pricing page, right? If your ranges aren't like super secret or confidential, like you could start there and then say something like for more higher fidelity quote or pricing, like reach out to us and we can like and we'll talk about your project. Cool. Megan, that's another question about the requirements document you mentioned, Dale. Do you cap it at 10 or like have you seen it like super long requirement sheets?
I think once you get past 10 or 15,
Yeah.
it kind of loses its edge. I mean, people want to know what that top
Yeah.
five or that top 10 thing, what am I going to miss if I don't see this document? What am
Yeah,
I,
otherwise
what,
I think it gets too burdensome too, right? Like someone's just trying to get information out quick. Like if you make it super long, I think people are just going to drop off and not complete it.
yeah. One thing I will mention on that is make it so that format it so that they can copy and paste it and email it to vendors. Okay, so you'll notice if you look at that requirements document that I put online there that you can at the bottom section is the requirements, modify whatever you want, but make it in a form that I used to answer requests for proposal all the time for the government. When I was selling to the government, I was always
Mm.
getting RFPs,
Yeah.
RFPs, RFPs. And so we had a very standard way that we answered those things. We would see the requirement, we'd say our solution meets or exceeds this requirement. That's always the first thing. So in
Mm.
case that's all they read, that's how you respond to it.
Mhm.
Um, but make it in a form that you can just email it to somebody if that your potential customer can email it to vendors. In all likelihood, they won't ever really go shop it around. It's just you've started to add value and you're going to have the inside track on that. So it's highly unlikely that they'll actually send that out to any of the vendors, but I like to make it look like it could be
Yeah.
easy to do that.
Yeah. All right. Last one was from Schuler. How do you find the current volatility impacting marketing and sales? Obviously, like we are in a very interesting economic time right now. So have you seen, how have you seen, Dale, or how do you anticipate seeing, like, especially like an impact of pricing and people's request of pricing as it comes like, over the rest of this year?
Yeah, I've seen a couple different parts to that. I've seen one thing I've seen is the impact of AI on SEO.
Yeah.
I've seen it really affect that a lot. That the results are different. But far as pricing, a lot of our customers have increased prices over the last 12 to 18 months. It was actually pre the election. We
Hmm.
were getting when inflation was really rampant a couple of years ago, customers were going into the catalog and increasing their pricing like 2 or 3% every quarter. So I think we're seeing prices go up, but are people going to stop buying? I don't know. I think the mechanism of using price curiosity is not going to change a whole lot. It may actually even be more acute because as prices do fluctuate and change, people are going to be more, um, they're going to be more concerned with getting an actual current price. They're going to act on things probably even more aggressively than saying, well, I kind of know what that is, so I'm not going to worry about it. They might say, well, it has something, this might be sourced from China. Has the price gone up a lot?
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely probably an opportunity here to build trust and be transparent and support your customers that way. Because they're like probably feeling it all over the place. So cool. Dale,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Hope
this
it
was
was
this was really
helpful.
great. I like, one of the four P's of marketing we hardly ever talk about, pricing. It's super important.
It is.
So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Dale, especially, thank you for joining us today. If anybody wants to connect with you, Dale, or hear more about Price and Curiosity, how can they reach you?
I'll drop my stuff in there. I'm on LinkedIn. That's the best way.
Just Dale Underwood on LinkedIn, right?
Yep.
Yep, there we go. All right.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. So, hey, next episode is going to be on May 1st, and we are going to be talking to Mike Hill. He is an engineer and now de facto marketer at Big Rocks Engineering. So, looking forward to that conversation happening on May 1st. Be on the lookout for emails from Peyton on that. And then between now and then, if you'd like to keep this conversation going with everyone here, join us on the Industrial Marketing Collective circle discussion board. Visit us at industrialmarketingcollective.com, or just reach out to me or Alan or Sarah or anybody else over at Gorilla, either via LinkedIn or on email, and we'll get you all set up. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.